next thing I know, the lights are glaring down upon me, and I'm having heart palpitations. My legs feel like jelly. My arms and hands are numb. I can't feel my fingertips.
I was constantly worrying. I couldn't stop. It was as if anxiety just simply took over my life.
I had no control over myself. I used to panic, I used to cry, and I used to get mad and yell and scream.
I would have to turn the lock on the door more than once until it felt right, that it was actually locked. So I'd have to reopen it and relock it and reopen it and relock it. Sometimes 3 times, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes more than that, sometimes just 2 times.
My hands would get very sweaty, my hands would shake, and I would worry if people were watching me and watching my hands.
I started having flashbacks about the car accident. I never knew when I was going to have one. They started taking over my life.
These people didn't know it then, but they were each experiencing the symptoms of an anxiety disorder. There are actually 5 different kinds: panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, social phobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. This year, 23 million Americans will suffer from one of these anxiety disorders. They're the most common mental illness in the country, and they can attack anyone at any time. And I should know. Hi, my name is Mark Summers, and perhaps you've seen me hosting Double Dare on Nickelodeon. Hosting the show was fun, but each day was extremely challenging. I have a form of anxiety disorder called obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD is all about compulsive rituals, and mine were about cleanliness and making things symmetrical. I would take showers after each show. I would shower at the studio and then go back to the hotel and shower again. I just wanted to get clean. At home, I would spend hours arranging my possessions in particular order, like making sure the hangers in my closet were approximately 2 inches apart. My OCD was about cleanliness and order, but there are other OCD symptoms too, like constant checking or even hoarding.
I started doing checking, doubting if I turned off the stove, if I turned off the iron. I would have to go back to look. I knew intellectually that I had locked the door, but it still worried me and made me very anxious, thinking and doubting that I hadn't done it. OCD is a very secretive disorder. It's very embarrassing, and you don't want other people to see you doing things like checking the door and turning the light switch on and off and unlocking and locking the door again. It's very secretive and you feel very alone.
Obsessive compulsive disorder takes the form of repeated unwanted thoughts or compulsive behaviors that seem impossible to stop or control. But at least these symptoms are very specific. With generalized anxiety disorder, the worry is constant and never-ending.
I couldn't stop the feeling of persistent anxiety. It got so that I couldn't sleep. I guess all my life I was an anxious person. I would worry about my health even though I was perfectly healthy. But then it got to where I was worrying about my job or my kids or money, even though there was no reason to be worrying about those things. But what really made it bad was when I started to have physical symptoms as a result of the worrying, like stomach aches and intense headaches.
I'd worry about getting older and how much longer is my heart going to last and how much more can I take. I would get a pain somewhere and I say, oh, what's this coming on now? And I say, you're way too long. There may be something there I might have.
Just like OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder can also be destructive. The attacks seem to come out of nowhere.
I was driving along our highway and heading toward the bridge. There was a sign that said, "Last exit before bridge." And I had a lot of panic attacks on the bridge, and I always feared having another one. But this one, that sign, that it was just like, it could have been neon, you know, blinking on and off, you know, last exit, last exit. And I really did a dangerous thing. I was in the left-hand lane, and I moved my car right back over into the right-hand lane to get off at that exit, just so I wouldn't have to go on that bridge. And I drove back home, I parked my car, I went in my house, and I sat down on my stairs, and I cried. And I said, I can't do this anymore.
Psychiatrist Dr. Joel Tricarico is a specialist in the treatment of anxiety disorders.
The experience of anxiety is a normal human emotion. It is only when a degree of anxiety prevents the person from living a normal life. On those occasions, the person should refer themselves to their local physician. Depression is a serious illness that can sometimes accompany anxiety. It can be the cause of the anxiety, or it can result from the anxiety disorder itself. However, anxiety disorders are not just depression-related. They also can be great masqueraders of other medical illnesses.
Everyone gets depressed now and then, and it's a natural thing that you don't want to be around a lot of people when you're feeling down. But if you find yourself constantly avoiding people or social situations because it causes you anxiety, it could be a sign of social phobia.
When I was younger, it was tough because I did not experience the things that all my other friends did. As I grew older, it got worse. For example, parties. I mean, I would just sit there in the back by myself and be too intimidated to approach anyone. And if somebody would approach me, then I would start to elicit some forms of anxiety, like my palms would sweat and my heart would palpitate, and I just get real nervous. So a lot of times I would stay in the back of the room and just be by myself. I was sad that I wasn't able to go to these functions because I was very intimidated. So I spent a lot of time as an adult by myself. Having social phobia was a problem for me. I noticed that I almost would always have to have a drink before I went to any kind of social situation, from going to parties to even going to class.
People will quickly avoid situations that seem to bring on the anxiety. They may also try to use substances such as alcohol to deaden or lessen the feeling.
No one knows exactly what triggers most anxiety disorders, but with post-traumatic stress disorder, there's usually a traumatic event that brings it on, like an accident, maybe a sexual assault, or perhaps just witnessing a crime.
I had been having a lot of trouble in my life. I was really depressed and under a lot of pressure. And then out of the blue, I started having flashbacks about a car accident I had been in a few years ago. It was actually really weird because at the time, the accident wasn't a big deal for me. I wasn't even the person who got injured. But then suddenly it started coming over me again and again. I would think about it constantly. It would wake me up at night. I'd be dreaming about it. They were so vivid. It was like I was in the car. It got so bad I was afraid to sleep, and finally I wound up not even working anymore. I was under so much pressure.
What everyone seems to have in common here is they felt alone. I can tell you how I felt. I thought I was the only one in the world who had this thing, and I thought I could never tell anybody what I was going through. Fortunately for me, while I was hosting a show called Biggers and Summers on Lifetime, the featured guest was a doctor who was an expert on OCD. Last night, as I was going through notes, I couldn't read the material. I couldn't do it because it brought so many things to the surface. And we talked before the show about OCD, and this is something that I have. To what extent, I'm not sure. That was the very first time I realized that I had a treatable illness.
My husband finally made me go see a psychiatrist because nothing was working. And she was the one who finally told me that what I had was generalized anxiety disorder, which actually is an illness. And it made me feel better just to be able to put a name to it. She prescribed medication, and within basically a short period of time, my anxiety was under control.
This was the final moment that I had a number to call. I'd been holding on to the number for a while, hoping that I could make it through myself, and I couldn't. And I called an organization called Freedom from Fear. There was a lovely woman on the telephone who set up an appointment with me to come right in. I had an evaluation. I saw a psychiatrist. We talked about going on medication.
I found the group therapy very helpful and very useful too, and met a lot of people that we traded off stories, and I felt more and more relaxed, less tension.
I got results almost immediately with the medications and the cognitive behavioral therapy, because they teach you coping skills that you use right away, and they work.
I'm pleased to report that over the past 15 years or so, the technology to treat people with anxiety disorders has improved dramatically. We are in fact able to treat with medication, with cognitive behavior treatments, and with other behavioral therapies, and so that our clients are able to improve in the majority of cases, and in almost all cases, improve the quality of their lives. The technology that has been developed for these medications has demonstrated that they are more efficient in treatment of the problem, and they are safe, and their side effects are minimal.
What's important to me is that through treatment, I learned to function with my disorder, and now life is so much more enjoyable. And you know, the same is true for a whole lot of other people.
And then within 4 months after treatment, I was able to go on a beautiful trip with my husband and enjoy ourselves and not feel like I needed to run home and hide.
I feel reborn. I'm able to do things that I was not able to do before because I was just too intimidated. Now it's fun. It's like riding a bike for the first time.
I'm just really happy and lucky that I got treatment for this disorder as quickly as I did.
They gave me a 70th birthday party, and I was on the medication a couple of weeks. And everybody at the party noticed that there was a big change on me. I was dancing, and I was telling jokes, and I was talking with everybody.
I'm back in the world of work now, and my persistent anxiety is under control. I love my job, and the most important thing for me is that my relationship with my husband and my kids is so much better.
Thanks to therapy, the flashbacks are gone. My family even says I'm getting back to my old self again, and I feel like I'm really living my life free of fear.
If you think you might have an anxiety disorder, you're not alone. And as you've seen, help is available. If you'd like more information on the treatment of anxiety disorders, contact your doctor or a mental health professional, because take it from me, a better life is waiting.